Hi folks. In this little video, we're going to discuss the Walmart mini case. And unfortunately, I won't be able to record videos for every mini case because just like you, as this semester goes on, I will get busier, and of course you will too. So although I won't be able to review every case, once in a while, it'll certainly be helpful to do that. And I think it's a good idea to get started here with the first mini case by just talking about a few basic concepts in dealing with mini cases as well as this particular one. I think, first of all, it's a good idea just to think for a moment about what Walmart's product is. What is Walmart's product? And I hope you did not answer, it's the stuff on Walmart's shelves, because that certainly is not Walmart's product. The stuff on Walmart's shelves is comprised of Walmart's suppliers' products, whether it's groceries or televisions or hardware or linens or drugstore items. Walmart's product is none of those things. Walmart's product is the store itself, isn't it? And the experience that you and I have in it. And that product has evolved over time. But initially, question one asks you just what Sam Walton's vision of a successful store would be, what he was trying to accomplish. And I'll read that first question right now. What was Sam Walton's original strategic vision for Walmart? How did this enable the company to gain competitive advantage? As we go through the course, pretty soon we'll distinguish types of competitive advantages. One type flows from low cost. Clearly, that's what Walmart had in mind. Another type flows from differentiation. And differentiating a company and its products from rivals' approaches to business is derived from adding value for the customer, not just added cost, but added value that the customer can realize. And as time passed, Walmart had to do that as well. But initially, Walmart wanted to offer, to do two things in particular to gain competitive advantage. The first one came from segmenting the market. Sam realized that rural markets had been overlooked by the large chains such as Sears, which were located in cities. So folks in rural America had to drive 2 or 3 hours just to get to the city to go shopping. And Sam realized that by putting a store in the middle of a cluster of rural markets enabled folks from those rural markets to drive an hour or less to get to a good department store or something like a department store with a lot of products in it. That would save them the trouble of driving 2 or 3 hours to get to the city. So Sam offered the differentiation of convenience. And in addition, he identified a new business model. And that new business model is characterized in the case as the self-service model. Sam realized that grocery stores enable people to just walk along shelves and pick off the products that they want. On the other hand, in a classic department store, retail chains like Sears and so many others, in this region, we have a chain called Belk's. It's a very nice department store. and it's broken up into lots of departments, and each department is staffed with one or sometimes more people to respond to customers. And of course, every time that's done, the cost of those people is added to the cost of the enterprise. And so department stores have high costs. They also, of course, break the store up into departments, and by doing that, they take up additional space just to separate out these different departments. And that space that is used to separate departments is not used to provide customers with an opportunity to pick something up and buy it. So the department store chain has pretty heavy overhead costs, and Sam realized that by using the self-service model of a grocery store, it would be possible to avoid such high labor costs, as well as taking advantage of more space to provide customers with an opportunity to pick something up and buy it, which of course is what the store is there for. So Sam was very smart in providing customers with convenience of closer access, as well as to low cost, which flowed from that self-service model. All those costs that were cut out from Walmart's business model could be shared with customers in the form of lower prices. And of course, the customers kind of like that. And so over time, Walmart grew, and as it grew, it asked its suppliers to share their scale economies from larger volumes of purchases by lowering their prices to Walmart even more. And so as time passed, Walmart became a true low-cost competitor. So its competitive advantages were primarily low cost. There was an element of differentiation, but over time, as we get through these subsequent questions, Walmart had to differentiate more than it did at the outset. So that takes us to question 2. How did Walmart continue to strengthen its competitive advantage over time? What does this teach you about the source of a long-term competitive advantage? And it was this question in particular that a lot of people just did not answer completely. You answered the first part, but you forgot to answer the question, what does this teach you about the source of long-term competitive advantage? Now, some folks, of course, did answer that part of the question, and they got higher grades for those answers than folks who did not. So what did Walmart do to strengthen its competitive advantage? And the answer is all sorts of stuff. So the answers to this question probably should have been longer than the answers to any of the others, because there's just so much stuff that needs to be put in here. And you should have covered a fair amount of it. Perfection isn't required, but you've got to answer the question fully to get, or fairly fully, to get full credit. So, as we mentioned earlier, one thing Walmart did was to use its growth in volume to demand lower prices from suppliers. And those lower prices to Walmart became lower costs, and those costs could be shared with customers in the form of lower prices. And of course, that becomes sort of a spiral, because lower prices bring in more customers, more volume, more leverage on the suppliers, and it just keeps on keeping on. So Sam really had it figured out in that case. And you should, in your economics course, have realized that this is the vehicle for what we call scale economy. Now, there's both scale economy and scope economy in this case. Scope economy is a term we use to describe adding to the scope of products that are offered through the same enterprise, and in this case, retail store vehicle. So over time, Walmart adds more and more products, and we'll get into that later. But as it does, it utilizes the space in the store to get scale economy. So scope economy is a vehicle into scale economy. Takes a little cost to add those additional products, but then you get the additional sharing of overhead costs over more volume and lower unit costs as a result. Then we get to the IT systems, which are covered in this case. And over the years, and I was around when Walmart started its thing, I particularly remember working for a company that makes tractors and high forklift devices and material handling equipment called Taylor Equipment Company in Louisville, Mississippi. Louisville is near nothing. It's just out in the boondocks. Takes forever to get there. Walmart realized that there were still a lot of employees at Taylor, and those employees surely didn't want to have to drive for 3 hours to get to a larger city like Memphis or Jackson, Mississippi. So Walmart put a store there, and I visited Louisville many times. And did quite a bit of work with that company. And of course, from time to time, I would go into town, and along with all the nice little restaurants and stores in this little town was this great big, well, what seemed to be big at the time, wasn't very big compared to Walmart stores today, but a Walmart store, and it was always packed. Not only that, and not just because it was in Louisville, but because folks from nearby towns would drive into Louisville just to get to the Walmart. So it was just a classic illustration of what we're talking about here. Now, in addition, Walmart was really hot for IT systems. Sam was not an IT technician, but he saw something good, and when he saw it, he grabbed it, and he got really superior IT technicians and IT capabilities. And among other things, it was possible for these systems to track the volume of products through each and every store. And as a result, the inventory in the store could be balanced to local demand conditions. And the result was that excess inventory could be avoided. Moreover, here we go again, if you didn't have to use the space to store a lot of products and merchandise, you could use it to add more shelves and a wider variety of products and get scope and scale economies, which of course is exactly what he did. And so once again, we have the makings of a low-cost strategy. Later on, Walmart added distribution centers, which are discussed in the case. And these distribution centers would hook up their computers to the suppliers, and the suppliers also could tap into Walmart's big system and get the same kind of inventory balancing benefits that Walmart stores got, because it would see the different products that were being demanded more or less and tailor their production planning accordingly. So the distribution system and logistics generally were and still are a major competitive strength of Walmart. They're great at it. Then some of you picked up on the fact that Walmart initially capitalized on some very positive employee relations tactics. For instance, it has a profit sharing program. So as Walmart's profits went up, employees would get bonuses or some other form of added compensation, which needless to say made the employees happy. Later on, when Walmart went public and sold its shares to the public, Walmart made it possible for employees to buy shares of Walmart at a discounted price. And of course, what that meant was that Walmart was reimbursing the broker dealers who were handling these trades for the difference between the market price and the price that the employees were willing to pay for them. I don't think that Walmart ever got a lot of credit for that, because later on, it was, as you probably know, Walmart was accused of paying its employees too little, and eventually ended up raising wages, and has done so again even recently. But as the case points out, these initial steps to engender favorable relationships with employees made the folks feel good and made them more productive. They liked working there, and sort of got into the culture of the Walmart way of doing business, satisfying customers, and so forth. That eventually, that higher productivity again led to lower cost. So what are the lessons? And that, again, that's the other part of the question that some of you didn't answer. And you could go about your answer a number of ways, but you had to answer it anyway. I think sustained competitive advantage, which is what we're being asked for here, requires, as some of you said, I love the term that one of you used, continuous improvement, because that's a very stylish phrase in modern American manufacturing. Continuous improvement. It actually flows from some Japanese models, Kaizen and Kanban, but that's another story. In any event, there are two types of continuous improvement, and the one that's so fashionable in American manufacturing is the way we get at low cost and differentiation through continuous improvement, doing things better and better, whether it's to make the customer, to serve the customer's requirements better and add value that way, or to simply be more efficient and lower cost. There's a new focus in the Strategic Management Academy, the collection of scholars in strategic management. And its title is Dynamic Capabilities. Some firms seem to have the capability to develop new capabilities. The ability itself, what am I looking for? The characteristics, the aptitude, there we go, the aptitudes to employ, to achieve continuous improvement by developing altogether new capabilities, which Walmart has done. That core seems to exist separately from the individual capabilities themselves. The core capability to moderate, innovate, and develop new capabilities is something called dynamic capability. And strategic management scholars, including me, are wrestling with that thing, whatever it is. Whatever dynamic capabilities are. And there's a lot of writing and a lot of questioning about it. And I, in fact, am in the process of putting an article into the academic literature about such things as dynamic capabilities. So it's a hot subject. In any event, let's move on to chapter 3 and get away from my scholarship. The third question was, but again, let me just fall back to the second question again. If you didn't answer that second part of the question, then you didn't read the question and answer adequately and answer it adequately, right? You have to answer all parts of the question. Okay. Question 3, by the early 1990s, Walmart was encountering limits to growth in the United States. How did it overcome these limits to growth? Explain how the expansion moves that Walmart made in the 1990s made economic sense and helped to create value for the company's shareholders. This is a pretty complicated question. And certainly I did not look for perfection in your answer here, but again, at least economic sense. How did it make economic sense for Walmart to do all this expanding? Once again, what this case is doing is trying to lay the groundwork for concepts that are going to come later. And one of those concepts is product development. Walmart's product is the store. Okay, so how do when limits to growth are being encountered, how can you grow beyond those limits? And one answer is to develop the product. But the product is the store. So as most of you answered, you add groceries and you create a super center. And the super center isn't just the store, the old store with groceries added, but as I mentioned, the new product lines keep getting added by Walmart. Whether it's clothing, more kinds of clothing, auto parts, it expands that way. And so the super center becomes a source of one-stop shopping where people in a hurry, we're all in a greater hurry these days. So, whether you're being motivated by time compression or simply the desire to save money, Walmart was responding to your need. So that was one concept. A second concept, and by the way, you certainly didn't have to say product development or this next one, which was market development. Okay, so another possibility is to take the product you've got and put it into new markets. And of course, that's what Walmart's expansion into foreign countries represented. And you all picked up on, or most of you did, on the mention in the case about moving into Mexico. And of course, after Mexico, Walmart moved into several other countries, and now a large portion of its revenues come from outside the United States. And thirdly is the possibility of doing both of these things, expanding the scope of products, or developing product development, and moving into new markets. And of course, that's what Sam's Club, the warehouse club, was all about. And this came again from Walmart's ability to identify a new market segment to be tapped into. And so the warehouse club, or Sam's Club, represented a new product for another market segment. That's the segment of folks who are motivated to buy in large quantities. There was a time when I remember when everybody was buying freezers for the home, separate from the refrigerator. They would buy this great big cabinet where they would freeze massive amounts of food, sides of beef. Just for those of you who might be taking this course later in your career, maybe you can remember. If not, ask your mother. But anyway, Walmart responded to this need, and of course the need that Sam's Club was responding to was the extreme need for lower prices through volume purchasing, and again, greater use of the warehouse space rather than a more formal retail store. So let's take a look then at question 4. Walmart is once again encountering limits to growth. Why do you think this is the case, and what might Walmart do about it? Most of you picked up on what was in the, incidentally, if you see that white spot off to my over here, you really can't even see it. That is the sun. I'm making this recording in the afternoon, and the sun is going down, and it's shining through my window. I haven't put the blade down, the shade down, and so what you see is the reflection of the sun on my desk blotter. So there's nothing wrong with your computer screen. There's simply something wrong with your instructor's intelligence, because I forgot to put the shade down on my window before I started to do this video. Okay, so growth limits. You all got the idea that the U.S. market was becoming saturated with lots of other competitors, including Costco, that's it, and the dollar stores. Several of you mentioned the dollar stores, which were not mentioned in the case, and good for you, because you're absolutely right. These days we have Dollar Tree, dollar store, dollar everything. So the market simply became saturated. Not only that, but Walmart sort of stubbed its toe or encountered difficulty in some foreign markets. Not all. It's still very successful in foreign markets. But in Germany, there are some great German competitors that have, in fact, invaded the U.S. market very successfully. So they were too strong for Walmart to overcome when it tried to invade Germany, and the same was true in South Korea. In that case, the issue was more cultural. Walmart could not adapt to the way folks buy and merchandise and patronize retail establishments. In Germany, it was more a case of legislation, sympathy of politicians, and regulation, and so forth. And Walmart just threw up its hands and said, the hell with this. We're not going to just sit here and lose money. We're just going to get out of here. And the same was true of South Korea. But Walmart has continued to grow in other countries. To make matters worse, Walmart found itself being criticized by domestic political interest groups because it paid low wages and also patronized foreign manufacturers instead of American manufacturers, even though it held itself up as an American enterprise, a great American enterprise. So that made life even more difficult for Walmart, and Walmart's profits dipped for a while. It had trouble dealing with these things. Eventually, and so the question is, what do you do in a situation like that? And you could have come up with a lot of ideas. Some of you came up with some good ones, some possibilities. One possibility is to go on back to the rural concept. And so Walmart has introduced a new business model called the neighborhood store, and it's basically that same store that I found in Louisville, Mississippi, but it's got groceries in it, and it's got a smaller scope of products, and the size of the store is smaller, and it's meant to serve a regional community. We've got one of those here in Wilson, North Carolina, where I live. We're I don't know, about an hour and a half drive from Raleigh, North Carolina, and yet here's this neighborhood store. And whenever I drive by it, the parking lot's full of cars. So I imagine that's a pretty successful concept. Another thing that Walmart is trying to do, and none of you mentioned it, I was surprised, but that is to go online. Another reason that the market has become saturated is Amazon, and all the other online retailers. And there's an old saying: if you can't beat them, join them. And Walmart is trying to do more business online. My impression is that it hasn't been a great success yet, but Walmart certainly has the resources to make it a success. So we'll have to watch how that one turns out. There's another concept that nobody mentioned, and I was surprised by that. And it's a variation of this theme that I discussed earlier, called product development. The product is the store. What Walmart has done is put new stores in its stores. So when you walk into a Walmart, even before you walk through the cash registers, along one wall, you find all sorts of new stores in Walmart stores. What do they offer? Glasses, they're opticians. Drugstores, hair salons and beauty salons, banks. They're Walmart, I'm not sure, but I seem to recall that it actually acquired a bank just so it could have bank branches in its stores. And I imagine they're very busy because they provide credit cards and retail financing. So wow. Even gas stations, of course, most of us are familiar with that. Most recently, there's almost another little store in the store. It's these self-service or self-checkout kiosks, right? So you don't have to wait in line if you don't have many things, if you haven't bought many things. You can go to a self-checkout area near the cash registers and just slide the tag on the product across a little scanner, and it'll read the barcode and calculate your bill, and you can pay with a credit card right there and never see a retail clerk. And so so far, what we see Walmart doing is trying to mainly engage in product development, although the online attempt would be market development, reaching into another market. By the way, when companies do both product and market development at the same time, the term that we use for that is product proliferation, and we'll run across that term as well as product development and market development later on in the course when we read chapters about the formation of strategy. So don't worry about it now, but in case you're interested, those are the vocabulary terms that we'll be using later. Now, one other item I guess I should mention, and that is that there has been some additional market development, and there certainly are opportunities for market development. Walmart, where are markets developing in the world? Answer: China, India, and the Southeast Asian nations, such as Indonesia, Philippines, Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, and they are growing much faster than the U.S. economy. Both China and India are growing faster, but the way you do business in China and the way you do business in India is not the same as the way retailers do business in the United States. So market development is sometimes a fairly tricky proposition, but that's another possibility that Walmart definitely is pursuing. Okay, this takes us to the fifth and the last question. How much of Walmart's strategy do you think was planned at the outset, and how much evolved over time in response to circumstances? What does this suggest to you about the nature of strategy development? Most of the answers to this question were quite brief. Yes, at the beginning it was planned. As time passed, it evolved, and that was the end of your answer. However, I did get a couple of pretty good answers here. I think what the publishers here are and the authors are trying to do is to get you to appreciate the importance of emergent strategies, which was a topic in Chapter 1. So initially, Walmart certainly had a plan, or Sam Walton had a plan, and it was based primarily on low cost and market segmentation. So Sam did not have in mind to cover the entire market or the entire industry. He wanted to focus in on market segments. Over time, the strategy evolved in response to Walmart's success and to the fact that it had additional competition, but it had accumulated resources with which to venture into larger urban markets and meet the competition head on. And when it did that, both Sears and Kmart were the victims of Walmart's strategy. They suffered because Walmart succeeded, and eventually went out of business. Kmart did. Eventually, Kmart, or the holding company of Kmart, acquired Sears and renamed itself Sears because it was the better known name. But still, the new Sears, which is really the old Kmart, just is essentially a small vestige of its old self. So as time passed, the business model changed in response to new business conditions, including problems such as saturation and more intense competition, especially from those dollar stores, right? And it evolved in response to opportunities. It wasn't all problems, right? Foreign markets presented opportunities. New product categories, such as hair salons and banks and opticians and the like, as well as the much broader scope of products, including groceries, of course. So there were, Walmart's strategy evolved over time in response to opportunities and problems. It evolved by going into foreign markets. It evolved by withdrawing from Germany and South Korea. So Walmart's strategy has emerged. And it's emerged in two ways. One, it emerged in an intended way. Walmart was nobody's fool. And he recognized from the get-go that if things went well, he would have the opportunity to expand the scope of his products, and through expanding the scope of products, a broader range of products, that would give him scope economy. That is the ability to use that retail space more. And in doing that, it would gain scale economy, a little bit of cost to expand the scope of products, for instance, into groceries, but using the space, the retail space more fully, would spread the fixed cost of the enterprise, the store, over a larger volume and achieve lower cost, which would enable Walmart to offer low prices. And so that's intended. And that again gets us back to dynamic capabilities. You know, Sam Walton didn't use the term dynamic capabilities. Hell, we didn't even have that term back then. Okay, but Sam sort of figured out dynamic capabilities before the scholars did. He realized that the enterprise needed to have the ability to realize scope economy and scale economy as his business prospered. He had to take that profit and reinvent and reinvest it in both product and market development. There were unintended opportunities for emergent strategy as well. And that's what Mintzberg in chapter 1 quotes Mintzberg's model of emergent strategy. And it's serendipitous. It just happens by chance. You stumble across an opportunity. So back in the years when I was consulting, I ran across people who just developed a nice new product, not a killer product, just a nice product that lended itself to retailing. And they went off to Walmart, and Walmart said, okay, that looks pretty good. We'll try it in a couple of our stores. And it went pretty well. And so eventually, through 2,500 retail stores, and those people who invented that nice little product got rich because of Walmart. So that's unintended or emergent strategy. It just responds. Very often, employees see an opportunity to do something a little differently, to serve the customer a little differently, and they suggest it. And I don't see as much of that at Walmart as I would like to see. But in several companies, there are formal programs that reward employees for coming up with ways to change the strategy, sometimes not in major ways, sometimes in a major way. And the result is a reward for the employees and a better profit for the employer. So ideas like that would have certainly been helpful in your answer to question 5. That pretty much finishes our review of chapter 1, or rather mini case number 1, the Walmart mini case. And as you can see, the intent of this mini case is to illustrate concepts that are discussed in the chapter. And in this particular case, also to introduce you to concepts that will follow later on in this course. So I might add that in this introductory case, mini case, I graded your papers fairly, for lack of a better term, leniently, although a couple of you may not think so. But as we go through the course, I'm going to expect you, after this little briefing, to read these questions more carefully, to make sure that you answer them completely. And with that, I think it's probably time for me to stop this recording, if I can find the right button to do that with, and say goodbye to you, and until we meet again. Goodbye. Goodbye.